And I got to hit that mute button over there. Really cool. Really quickly when that happens. All right, folks, welcome to Harmony Conversations. Today we have a presentation by Carl Snyder on Neo-Riemannian theory, which is going to be fantastic, as all of his presentations are. We want to thank PyBox and Slack for allowing us to use their tools with the Composer Exchange to get smarter, collaborate, and do all kinds of cool things here on the Composer Exchange and Harmony Chat. Carl, let's move on to your presentation here.
Okay,
Fire
here we go.
away. Looks awesome.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me show this motion. Again, this is in honor of our Meta members that are familiar with each of those numbers representing a semitone interval and how this moves around through space. This is our only moving slide, so I thought we'd start with that so you can enjoy it for a moment.
What's the difference between the triangles and the squares and the spheres in this case?
Well, as they say when you ask directions in Vermont, the answer is you can't get there from here. So triangles will move to, as you can see the triangle, see that 9 back there. He's not connecting 1 and 5. He's connecting 1 and 5 via 9. If you know what I mean. 9 is a direct, yeah. So, or there we have 4 and 8, but they only connect to, let me see if I can work. Yeah, they connect to each other, but 9 does. Let me take that back.
Yeah, it's
So,
pretty complicated
yeah,
in how that
the
works
relationships are a little complicated. So that's a good question, and maybe we should table that.
Okay, it's just like the directions in Massachusetts are, how do you get there? They say, well, take a right at the Dunkin' Donuts, and there's a Dunkin' Donuts on every corner, so you get lost.
Yeah, that would be a little better description. Okay. Anyway, let's move on because that's not our main topic. So
But very interesting.
we're going to go a step beyond Neo-Riemannian theory into some of the other geometrical matrices that have evolved since Hugo back in the middle 19th century. But first, we'll review them. His basic transformations. Art already did a great job on that, but just to be refreshed, we'll cover some of that ground briefly too. Before we do, I just want to mention something that I maybe should have noticed before about modes, and you probably already have already, but just in case, if we look at white notes, for instance, the C scale, all the C notes, we move up a step, we get Dorian, and every other note creates a chord. But within each mode, there are progressions, there are chords. So the point of this is they're already all laid out for you on the keyboard. All you have to do is put your hands on the keyboard. And there they are. So all that information is available to you just by putting your hands on the keyboard. I don't know why I never noticed this before, but anyway, there it is for anyone else that may not have.
So you're talking about the relationships between, so if you're in a D Dorian, what you're saying with that chart.
So here's A. Let's say we're in diatonic C. So Aeolian would be A, and we spell out every other white note. There's our A minor 7. And then the next one, we get the flat 5, the diminished chord, and so on and so on. The next one is a major 7, and so on. So within that mode, each scale tone has its own related scale tones 7 chord, right? Got me?
Yeah, what would the name of that be? As you know, so we're talking about a diatonic functional harmony within, say, C major. But when you move to the door to a mode, is there a name for that? For what those the relationship of those chords to the Dorian mode?
Well, that's sort of
No, I said like it's just this is just kind of for dummies in case you hadn't figured it out
Oh,
before.
it's fantastic.
I mean, if you're in Dorian, the thing that you weren't in C major, even though you're using only the white keys, you're not in C major. You're
You're in
in
D Dorian.
Dorian. It can be in any of these modes. You're
Yeah,
just using
yeah,
those keys, and
that's
that's
just the
the
illustration. We start from
right.
there if we're trying to illustrate it diatonically on white notes. That's all.
Right.
It'd
Right.
still
And
be
if you,
considered diatonic.
well, yeah, because it's of the
Diatonic
scale.
within Dorian.
It's of the
Or
scale.
Dorian within diatonic, perhaps, be better description.
Thank you for
Okay,
clarifying.
all right, good. So anyway, and Sharon touched on this in her brilliant modal interchange presentation. But here's a look. Let's say that the major 7 is C. So Aeolian is up here. 1 is scale tone flat 7 in Aeolian, flat 3 in Aeolian. So let us take another look here. Maybe that's clearer. So again, as we move around the circle, you see that most of the time it's inferring only one chord, but once in a while, in the case of the flat 7, or the 5 minor 7, you have two possible modes. So flat 7, you have either Dorian or Mixolydian. In dominant minor 5, minor 7, you get Mixolydian or Aeolian. Maybe this helps clarify that. So we're assuming that C is flat 3 if we're in Aeolian. C, D, E, F, G, A, B is the scale in Aeolian, right? In which A is 1, therefore C is flat 3. Anyway, for future reference, another way of looking at it, the modal interchange as an array. These are the simplest ones. Stu's taken this to the next level, plus, 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 plus. So let's move on to Neo-Riemannian transformations. So if you recall, there's 3 basic ones. Relative, as you can see from the score down here. C, where we move up one whole step from the 5th, creates the inversion of A minor. So C to A minor is called the relative. It's going to the relative minor. Fits what we already know in musical theory very well, or that all the first year students know. Parallel is simply C major to C minor. So the one note that's moving is the 3rd. It's moving down 1 semitone. That's the parallel transformation. These are what Hugo came up with. And then he came up with the leading tone exchange. So what he's doing is taking the tonic, which is C, and moving it down 1 semitone to the leading tone for the key of C. That gives us E minor, right? Uh, transposed. So that's minor 3. And this all fits. Oh, I didn't do Ionian, did I? Oops, I was going to show you on Ionian, of course. We have a minor 3. And we have it's opposite, the relative minor, A minor. So A minor, which is 6, minor 6 for the relative, minor 3 for the leading tone exchange. Okay, so those are the operations in major. Now, I found that, and here's the way it's, we've seen this is kind of a preview, but we've seen this in the tonets, where the triangle inverted with the pyramid on the bottom is the major. With the pyramid on the top, it's the minor. So here is our parallel. Here's our relative. And here's our leading tone. So those are those three major transformations. And as you can see, these are notes, not chords, right? So this is the spelling. So it changed from C, E, G, right, to C, E flat, G for C minor, or rather A, C, E for A minor, and E, G, B for E minor. Okay, so everything clear so far. Now let's go to the minor because it changed the rules are slightly different. So the parallel, of course, is going to be the same. Parallel transformation moves the third up a semitone to create a major triad. So back and forth, moving the third from major to minor, minor to major, all good. The relative transformation, however, moves the root down a tone to create a major triad. So one minor goes to flat 3, major. And I'm trying to be consistent with the way we talk about the chords. So when I put 1 minus, it means minor. If it's capital 3, it means major. Then leading tone exchange transformation from the fifth moves up by a semitone. So 1 minor becomes flat 6, which is a major chord. So to summarize, the R transformation in minor moves to the mediant, which is flat 3, which all makes sense because that's how the minor changes go. And whoops. And the L transformation in minor moves the 1 minor to flat 6, which is a major chord. So that's what the basic Neo-Riemannian transformations look like in minor. So from there, we have the next iteration. Oh, we have these cycles and how these move. So while you can use Neo-Riemannian theory to create or analyze just about any chord progression, composers have often focused on chains of operation that create closed cycles of triads. Cycles begin and end on the same chord, and they follow a specific pattern of transformations. Much like a sequence, there are 3 possible cycles that use 2 transformations: the PL cycle, parallel and leading tone, the RP, relative to parallel, and the RL, relative to leading tone. PL and RP cycles close the loop after relatively few transformations. It only takes 6 for the PL cycle, and as you can see, it comes back to where it started. Just 6 moves. The RP cycle takes a bit longer, so back and forth, relative to parallel, relative to parallel, relative to parallel, relative to parallel, and we're back at 1, just transposed. Okay.
Or inverted, you
There's going to
mean?
be questions later. I know there'll be questions later, so I'm trying to move on. Go ahead.
You meant inverted, not transposed.
Inversion. Sorry, I shouldn't say transposed. Inversions. Yeah, we're talking about inversions right now. Okay. So if we do the RL cycle, it's It's a monster. It goes through all 24 major and minor triads, which is a wonderful thing. And I think you can hear it in the slow movement beginning of Beethoven's Ninth. And there's not too many other places where you're going to see somebody go through all of them. Anyway, since this cycle takes so long to close the loop, is often ignored or presented in truncated form. So here we have blah, 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 etc. It takes 2 cycles of the PLR transformation to return to the starting chord. So if you go parallel, leading tone, relative, parallel, leading tone, relative, we're back to where we started. No inversion needed. So the next iteration is, and these are still considered neo-Riemannian transformations that occur frequently. The slide is effectively the opposite of the P transformation. It moves the 2 pitches that form the perfect fifth in a triad by semitone and changes the mode of the triad. So here you see the slide going from C to C sharp minor. The E stayed the same. The Nebenverwandte, the Nebenverwandt transformation just means neighbor related, moves both members of the minor triad in a triad by semitone, and again changes the mode. So here we see F minor, C going to F minor in the N transformation. And then the hex pole connects a triad to its modal opposite, a third away, by moving each voice by a single semitone, generating the hexatonic pole in the hexatonic PL cycle, which kind of begs the question, let's look at what the hexatonic cycle is. So both the PL and the RP cycles generate a parent scale made up of all the notes used by its constituent triads. The PL cycle generates the hexatonic scale. So we go C to C minor, that's the parallel. C minor to A flat, that's the leading tone. A flat to A flat minor is parallel again. A flat minor to E is the leading tone. E parallel takes the E major to E minor, and E minor leading tone transformation takes us back to C. So the other side of the hexatonic cycle is the one directly below. So that would be A flat minor, or directly opposite, I should say. In this case, if we're going North Pole to South Pole, it's A flat minor. And as Mike has already noted, the hexatonic scale is a symmetrical scale. Now, the other kind of scale we're going to be forced to talk about is the octatonic scale. Conveniently, the RP cycle spells it out for us. So C2 relative, C A minor, parallel takes us back to the major, relative takes us to F sharp minor, parallel makes it major, relative makes it E flat minor, parallel makes it E flat major, relative makes it C minor, and parallel we're back to C again. So it's an 8-step cycle spelling out the octatonic scale. And as Mike knows, another symmetrical scale made up of alternating semitones and major seconds, as Stuart knows as well. You might consider these scales to represent the overall sound of the cycle. So here's a picture of, just like with other symmetrical chords, like the augmented and the diminished chord, the hexacycles, there's only a limited number of them. Augmenteds, there's 3. With hexacycles, there are 4 possible ones. That covers all our 12 notes. And there's a picture of them. Moving on. So we looked at the 3 hexapoles, 3 slide, neighboring tone, and hexapole. These transformations can be considered combinations of the stable, that should be stable, PL and R transformations. For example, you could describe H as a PLP. So that's another way to get to the hextonic pole. Indeed, you can describe the connection between any two or another routing or traffic signals for it. Indeed, you can describe the connection between any two major and or minor triads as combinations of transformations. You can get from one triad to any other in 5 steps or less. The most interesting are those that use parsimonious voice leading in which no single voice moves more than a step. And here's a table of the chromatic medians in major, what transformations you need to do to get from one to the next, or to your target. So 2 steps. Hexatonic, if you want to call it 3 steps, you can. It'll get you here. This PRP will get you here. And then in minor, a table for that as well. So that's there for your reference. Types of transformations may have some emotional contexts. So I've tabled those for you too, for each of the types of major types of transformations and what they might kind of generate in the emotional sphere, which is where it's all at, right? Okay, here's a couple examples that I got from, and here's the reference if you want to look it up. There are pictures of the scores there, so that might be fun to look at. And again, here are the emotional themes that they're implying and how the transformations got you to what chord and how that might have that emotional context. I've got a lot of slides, so we won't dwell on this. Hello, Mike. So, a little review of the tonets is coming here. So before before Hugo von Riemann, there was a guy named Euler back in the and he came up with this back in 1750s. So as you can see, when you make a net and array your notes, he found very conveniently that we get the cyclofifths going this way. You see that? Those are all perfect fifths. You have minor thirds moving diagonally down this way, and you have major thirds moving diagonally this way down. And there'll be plenty more to, we'll be looking at this quite a bit for a little bit. So now we already looked at this part of the tonets, and we just had a sneak peek at a bigger piece. But as you can see, you can just build it out, and bloop, 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 more and more triangles. And here we go. So there is the tonets in a bigger version where it doesn't repeat. And I just wanted to show you some, this is called the Fun with Tonets segment, where if you didn't know how a chord is spelled, let's say, but you had a tonets in front of you, all you have to know is, number 1, find the root. Number 2, the number to your left horizontally is going to be scale tone 4, and scale tone 5 is going to be on your right. And now you know how to spell a sus4. So we can use this for everything. Here's a sus2, root, 5th, 2nd, horizontally. You can do parallelograms, I believe they're called, and get the major 7th shape. Root is the top left hand of the parallelogram. The 3's down here, the 5's here, the 7's here, C, E, G, B. That works. Now we take this one, Forget the name of this shape, but there's a geometric name for it. And this gets us the ninth. So all we did was add another triangle. How convenient. C, E, G, B, and there's our ninth. It even makes sense. Now, in terms of sequence, then it gets a little fancier here with our 7 chord, root 3, 5 triangle, and travel up in the same direction, and you get your a flat 7. The 9 is going to do the same thing, except it's going to just fill in this triangle, right? We're going to get the flat 7 up here. We get 9 over here. We want to spell a 13 is just like the 9, and we add another triangle next to it, and it spells 11 and 13. So these are parlor tricks, but I thought you might enjoy them. Here's the minor 7 chord. So you get the idea. These they all line up in order. Now here's the augmented chord. Hey Art,
Hi, Carl.
how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing
Good, I'm
okay.
so glad to hear it.
I'm in
Great.
rehab now. I don't want to
Great.
disturb Carl's discussion here.
Yeah, I was mostly doing a review, but we're kind of going into some of the parlor tricks we can do with the tonets. So as you see, augmented triad, we already reviewed that, how it goes in that direction and spells. Diminished goes the other way, and it's symmetrical, so you just keep going. And you have the fully diminished chord. Of course, it's going to start over again, so we don't need to go any further. Then I wanted to give you this distinction here with the tonets. As you may have noticed, the sharp notes are on the bottom, the flat notes are on the top. To kind of accommodate it, but there are different spellings. In a few cases, we're going to have to know enough music theory to know when a sharp should properly be spelled as a flat and vice versa. So here's how you would do a half diminished chord. You're going to make that shape. Okay, now we can even do scales. Now in these, it's not going to be arrayed in perfect order, 1, 3, 5, 7, etc. You just have to know the root's going to be here. 2 is going to be over on this corner. 3 is going to be in the middle. 4 is going to be in the other corner. 5 is going to be between 1 and 2. 6 is going to be over in this corner. 7 is going to be over here. And it changes depending on which kind of scale it is. So that's the pattern for the major. The minor, your root starts here, and the array is different, but the shape works. So you drop this 1 anywhere, and you can spell right off of the tonets. With the major pentatonic, you simply drop out the 4 and the 7 and use the major scale. With the minor pentatonic, you simply drop out the 6 and the 2. So, and I think this might be our final trick. So here we can see that the same shape applies to every mode. It's just who's going to be the root. So here's F's the root, G's the root, blah, blah, blah. So, I have 2 more parlor tricks. Here's the harmonic minor scale. And here is the melodic minor scale. So pretty versatile, especially for a student that can't find their way around the keyboard yet. They can look at the tonets and spell any chord properly. So kind of where we left off, starting back now toward where we left off before, in moving harmonically and graphing it through the tonets, you can go just about anywhere you want to go. And this will tell you what you're doing. We looked, when Art did his presentation, we looked at some great examples of music, and he had them animated. And I would refer you all to that same book, Audacious Euphony, and the website to replay those. And there's 2 or 3 more on there that you could look at while you listen to the music. We are in mono today, though. No sounds. Here's that pattern that we just saw in the Brahms, by the way. And here's how he spelled it. So you can see there's the parallel, 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 parallel. Okay, so let's move on to augmented triads. So this is where we start to diverge from normal neo-Riemannian transformations, because they only deal with major and minor triads. The augmented triad does provide a useful link between major and minor triads, specifically those that are connected by the R transformation. You may have noticed that the R transformation isn't quite the same as the P and L transformations because it moves its non-preserved note by 2 semitones, while the others move their non-preserved note by 1 semitone. So not a big deal, but in a sense, the R transformation is twice as much work as the P and L transformations, if you care to look at it that way. If we fill in the gap between 2 R-related triads, an augmented triad emerges. So we go C augmented, we get A. Likewise, the same augmented triad can connect to 3 different major triads by moving a single voice by a semitone. Augmented, augmented, augmented. All right, now here's some new stuff. Weizmann. The diagram illustrates the 4 augmented triads. There are only 4 because the chord is symmetrical. And the major and minor triads they can resolve to by moving only 1 voice by semitone. So each one has its own little set of places it can go by moving only 1 voice by semitone. Each augmented triad and its 6 associated triads are referred to as the Weizmann regions, named after Carl Friedrich Weizmann, who wrote at length about the augmented triad and its versatility in several of his treatises back in the 19th century. Each line represents moving 1 note in a triad by a single semitone, as you can see. When you trace a path from a triad on the left to a triad on the right, you'll find several of the transformations discussed previously. R, S, and N each require a total move of 2 semitones, and each of these can be traced through any given Weizmann region. So it's another way to get there through the augmented chord. Here is an interesting representation. Its cardinal points contain the 4 augmented triads, each of which is connected to the 6 triads of its Weizmann region, minor triads to its clockwise side, major to its counterclockwise side. So again, here's the augmented chord. Here it is sitting in the region. Here's another augmented chord sharing the same region. Right? But different notes of the triad, same roots. And here it is over here. So you see they are all cohabiting peacefully. Intersecting the Weizmann regions are the hexatonic regions, shown as textured pools. The figure, whoops. The figure
Quick
suggests that
question.
the Weizmann, yes, hold on.
Quick question on this. So what you're saying, so say E flat, G, and B, if you're leveraging that common tone of the E flat as the root, you're going to, there's 3 options for major or minor chords. So if you're going, depending on which direction you're going, correct? Or you're going from an augmented chord to another augmented chord.
Right,
So what I'm
well,
saying is, so like let's say the E, G, B. Okay, I'm moving
through
down
these,
to a
through
G
these,
plus.
yeah, what he's suggesting in this image is through these pools. So you only get to here by going through here.
So well,
From
let's go down for a second because I can read it easier. So you go
Okay.
E, so you go E flat, G, and B. There's your augmented. Now I'm going
Yeah.
down to a G plus. Well, it's the same thing, right? The G, a G
G
is
minor
so
or
I go into I go from in other words, instead of going from the E flat, G and B, I'm going from the G, B, and E flat to the B flat minor by moving those two top notes there, correct? That's your pool to get then down to the D, F, and B flat as an example. So that I keep the B flat. Well, wait a second. No, I kind of lost in how you're connecting. If I'm trying to go down, so I go the E, G, B, and then from there I
yeah,
go to the I essentially, instead of EGB, I'm going GB E flat because that's in your pool, right? And then I'm trying to transform from that essentially G augmented chord. How do I'm trying to transfer, say, to the B minor. Okay. So I'm going to lower the, oh, I see. I'm going to lower the, essentially the root, okay, to the G flat or sharp, F sharp, and then I'm going to lower the E flat to the D, and now I have the B flat, or the excuse me, the B minor, and I still kept that B as the common tone, and then now from there, that's how I can transform into the D, F sharp, and B flat, right? Because I still have the D, and I still have the F sharp. And all I'm doing then is moving the B to flat. And now I've got that augmented, the D, F sharp, B flat, that other augmented chord. I just talked through
or
that process in
yeah.
my head, and I hope I didn't bore anybody with it, but that
No,
makes
that's
sense
okay.
now.
Okay. And then, of course, we can always use that augmented chord to kind of to get to a new tonal center, if you will. So here's a colorful way to put it. For the hexatonic mariner, the Weizmann regions form bridges. For the Weizmann landlubber, the hexatonic regions are rivers to cross. To circumnavigate the entire complex, one need only locate an appropriately amphibious vehicle. And that's what Christopher was just doing. So there's one for you to contemplate between meditating on your navels. All right, so so now we can see all the arrays that we're talking about here. So here's the hexatonics, here's the Weizmann regions, and here's a visualization of connecting them all together. So this is going somewhere, believe it or not. Go ahead.
I think that was
The
somebody's background.
hexatonics, okay, the four hexatonic cycles are portrayed by the circuits of unbroken lines. The four Weizmann regions by the broken line water bugs swimming in those pools. So you see, we can get from here to here, and we can get from here to here, and we can get from here to here, but we don't go like that. So that's what the solid lines are about. This one doesn't go to here, but it does go to here. This one goes to here, doesn't go to
So in the
here,
example
and
before,
goes to here.
if I go
So
from
that's why these shapes are like this, because it shows you what
yeah.
works.
So you've got
So
essentially, if you come from, say, the E flat augmented, you've got really, if you go to the G augmented, from the G augmented, you've got really three paths to get over to your D augmented. Or if you go to the B flat, you've got three paths, or the or the E flat, or excuse me, the B augmented, you've got three paths. If you go to the
Mhm.
to the E flat augmented, you've got three paths.
Or
So you've got
you
three
you
transitions
maybe
with three paths to get over to the other augmented chord.
right, which may be much further than you want to go, because with neo-Riemannian type transformations, they're without tonal center, so in a sense they're atonal,
Right.
which means they can be a little vague and they're just
So,
moving around from here to there and the other place, which is
so,
great in movie music
so
and
I have a
cinematic
question
stuff.
about this.
Sometimes you want to come to a, a cadential kind of conclusion of some sort.
So I have a
So
question.
you might, my point is, you might want to go, your object might not to be to pass through all of these. You might want to muck about here for a while and then change tonal centers via the augmented to a new tonal center. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're looking at the like E flat, G, and B on the far left side, right? It's the same chord whether you're in an E flat augmented, G augmented, B
Yeah,
augmented, same chord, different tonal center. And then from any of those, we have an avenue to go to from let's say an E flat augmented to an E minor to a C minor,
yes,
G flat minor. Okay. And then
yes,
the
yes,
now,
you got it.
I'm trying to understand the solid lines now. Now that I'm in there, I picked E minor, right? And I can make it well, I could raise two things and go up to E augmented
Yeah, so
again.
you can go up to this to C augmented,
Okay.
or rather
Okay, so that's
C.
only changing one thing. And
Yeah,
then
you can
E
go,
augmented
you
will
can
be changing
parallel to E.
things. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. I think I'm understanding where that's going.
Technically,
so
you could just go down chromatically too. You could take your E flat, G, and B, and just go down to a D, G sharp, and B, or and A sharp. You could, I mean, these are the options of passing chords in between them, but you can also just say, screw it and go take a different route. I'm taking a shortcut. Cut out the middleman.
yeah, yeah, you guys are kind of quick and you're trying to get to the next step as fast as possible. So let's look at the cubes that those are constructed from first, because that was kind of a step ahead of this concept here. Alternating any pitch in an augmented triad produces 6 possible constant triads. We just saw that in the Weitzman regions, right? Each is common to 2 cubes. The union is known as the cube dance. So again, here we see better. C to C minor is a go, C to E minor, major to E minor is a go, E to E major is a go, E to A flat is a go, A flat minor is a go, A flat minor to A flat is a go. So the solid lines, you can travel them. The other ones are connected, but it's not the way they function is a little different. So let's take this back to our picture again. This is better because now we don't have all those confusing little minuses in the way, and we can see
Yeah, it looks like
F just means F minor, D flat just means D flat minor when it's lowercase. When it's uppercase, it means major. So this is better picture. The augmented triad coupling 2 hexatonic cycles can also be found embedded in both associated hexatonic sets, a common trichord. Any triad in a given hexatonic cycle can move through a coupling augmented triad by a neighboring hexatonic cycle in 3 ways. 1, 2, 3, like Mike said, or back to a triad within its own cycle in 3 ways. 1, 2, 3. If the transition is to a neighboring hexatonic cycle, then the coupled consonant triads are related by inversion. And if the transition is within a single cycle, they are related by transposition. And this gives us the cube dance, which is the new iteration from Neo-Riemannian world, figured out by Jack Duthet. And that's what it looks like. So how does this line up with the tonets? The cube dance and the tonets present us with two essentially equivalent modes for representing triadic progressions from the standpoint of their voice leading properties. So that's the way to think about it. Each graph has its own heuristic advantages. The tonets is more compact, shows individual pitch classes rather than fusing them into triads, preserves connections with historical modes of thought, is more amenable to tracing common tones, and consistently correlates planar directions with transformations. Cube dance is a more direct model of true voice leading distance, both because it does not require an exercise of imagination across the Bering Strait, and because it gives the augmented triads explicit locations. Right. And there's your assignment. Do something with it.
So the idea is around the cube dance portion as opposed to the other pieces of this, or the tonettes, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
very
explore it.
interesting.
Explore it. See what happens. Like I said, you may find yourself in a territory that is meandering about, and so you may want to finish things off with something cadential, or you may not. You may just be writing some movie music. Let's see.
Yeah, so you have all these other lines. Now, I looked up online oh no, go back to that, please. I looked up online another cube dance tonettes kind of thing, and one of the things that's interesting is they actually have a line drawn between that B flat and the D flat. So let's say take the D plus on the left. Okay, or that's a D flat plus. Okay.
Yeah.
If you go down, they have a line, makes it even more confusing, a little bit more of a donut from that B flat up to the D flat, and then from the D minor to the F. So they have a couple extra kind of red lines connecting some of these points.
Right. So as we said before, these three spokes, if you will, are the ones that connect you from the D flat augmented chord to this next center.
Yeah, but so if you take say the D flat to the D minor, but then that D minor then also can connect to the F above it. So take the D minor on the bottom, on the middle of on the lower left there, and connect it to the F, and the
F
B
sharp?
flat. No, up above the next one, the section above. Yeah, to
Oh,
there. So they have some lines drawn that way, which is kind of
okay.
interesting. And you have the B flat minor
Well,
that goes up to the D flat in the middle over there. So
okay, well,
they're still making a triangle.
there are more dimensions. Yes.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. This is kind of like the direct in between route, but then there's these other
Yeah, I mean, this is
more
one way to
obscure
go.
things.
There are other things that can be used to transition. You can use the diminished chord. You can use a major 7 chord. It's not the only way. In fact, if you like, if we have time, we can examine using the diminished chord. Let's go. So now this little bonus is kind of directed to Christopher, because as I was working through all these Neo-Riemannian transformations, I was thinking, well, this is great, but Christopher did that wonderful thing where he'd move 2, he'd take scale tones four note chords, 7 chords, and move 2 notes at once and get parsimonious voice leading. I'm saying, wow, that's great. That seems to be the next extension of Neo-Riemannian theory to me. So I looked into it a bit, and here's what I found. The chicken wire torus. In the chicken wire torus, the edges represent transformations from the PLR family of contextual transformations. So now we can see a few more different shapes of such a bunch of triangles. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexatonic. And we have those little cubes. And it's just really expanding. So you might want to put your tinfoil hats on because your brains could explode anytime now. The solid edges represent the P transformations and connect triads that have the same root. Okay, so remember C sharp to C sharp minor, that's the parallel transformation. E minor, 7, E7, C, solid line. Okay, now what else? The dotted edges represent the L transformations and connect triads that have different roots. So dotted, where's a nice easy example? G minor 7 to B flat 7. Yep. D minor 7 to F7. Yep. Leading tone transformations. The dash edges represent the R transformation, the relatives. G, where's it dashed? And I've got lots of diminished in here as well. So here's one, C7, C dominant 7 to E diminished 7 is a relative transformation. Or perhaps we should say E diminished 7 to C dominant 7. So now we're looking at, because we're now dealing with 7 tones, we have to dredge up the matter of octacycles. So like hexacycles, they just have 8 notes. And as we recall, these are symmetrical. These are the 3 possible octacycles that there are. So now it gets a little bit funny here. Let's look at this. Octatowers. Okay. So I see 3 kinds of A flat chords here. 3 kinds of B chords here. 3 kinds of D chords here.
D chord. Where's the other D chord? Oh no, it's in the middle. I see. D's, B's.
Okay, so you're like the first one, it's like a D half diminished 7th going to D minor because you're just moving one thing. Half 7, you're just moving one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the old parsimonious.
Oh, and then you could go back and then you pass it the other way to you climb the tower, basically. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are interesting concepts, man.
Power Towers is the 7th chord analog of the cube dance. We start with octatowers and look for tetrachordal couplings for the octatonic towers. For the same kind of reasons that augmented triads served well as coupling trichords for hexatonic cycles, diminished 7th chords are ideal coupling tetrachords for octatonic towers. I smell another geometrical construct about to appear using the diminished seventh chord as the transition, and it's coming. So here we go again. Here's the shape for the tower's torus. In the chicken wire torus, there are two P transformations for seventh chords. P1 exchanges the half diminished and the minor seventh chords that have the same root, and P2 exchanges the minor and dominant seventh chords with the same root. The L transformation exchanges two root distinct related triads. L1 exchanges root distinct P1 related half diminished and minor seventh chords, and L2 exchanges root distinct P1 related dominant and minor seventh chords. R exchange triads, dashed edges, and the two seventh chords. See R in the tower's torus diagram. So we could probably spend a half hour here and maybe get nowhere, but I'll leave that with you to peruse at your leisure, because here's what happens. Now we've got the diminished seven chord attached. Art's reaching for his tin hat. Attached to the tower, the octatonic tower, right? Another diminished chord over here, another diminished chord over here, as ways to get from octatonic tower to tower. In other words, we just solved Neo-Riemannian transformation for seven chords. Now, Chris is going to study this and he's going to say, hey, this is what I just showed you 3 weeks ago.
It is pretty fascinating to see the difference with jazz harp. I mean, it's like math is a drug, man.
It's horrible.
It's addictive.
It's awful.
You know, I can see Stewart. It's like, when he made his wheel, it's like, oh man, you saw the math of it and went, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
When you revealed this, Carl, you kind of laughed like a Bond villain, where you live in a submarine underneath.
I'm waiting for him to go like this.
It is kind of evil.
Dr. Evil.
It is kind of evil.
Now, what can you do with the towers?
All right. So a little background here is in the case of cube dance, the numbers enclosed in squares that surround this graph are the sum classes of the transpositionally equivalent seventh chords adjacent to the numbers. This graph illustrates how diminished seventh chords function as couplings between octatonic towers, thus providing a way to modulate between octatonic sets. Similarly to the augmented triad in cube dance, the diminished seventh chord coupling two octatonic towers is embedded in both associated octatonic sets. Diminished seventh chords are only adjacent to dominant and half diminished seventh chords, and if the coupled seventh chords are in different towers, they're related by inversion, and if they're within the same tower, they're related by transposition. In other words, you're going to name them differently when you transpose as to what you're referring to as the root, even though its spelling would be the same. Yeah.
So, you know what, probably a really challenging exercise would be, okay, take giant steps and write it out in Neo-Riemannian, graphs.
Somebody has done a paper about Coltrane changes in Neo-Riemannian theory.
That would be really wild to see.
But I think that one might be a step too far, but anyone that's ambitious and crazy enough to go the octatonic diminished route, feel
A
free.
giant step too far.
Yeah, bada bing.
Yeah,
Hey, he gets pun of the day.
I know that's one for the immortals. So we are about done, I hope. And this just shows you that you can also represent these things in 3 dimensions. And this is a torus in 3 dimensions. And what they had to do to connect them all was they had to twist it a third and then they all line up to get together again. So, and that's how it really is in the 3D world. We're not really just two-dimensional flatland beings. We're in 3 dimensions. So I think that about does it. Oh, there's plenty of good things on the web. There's this fellow that did a whole series about Riemannian transformations, so highly recommend these. I haven't seen them all myself, but they're well done, well thought out. So that's a little something for further study. And thank you very much.
Hey, that was really interesting. Really appreciate you taking the time to put that together. That was
Yeah,
really
really
fun.
good.
So if folks have
posting it, right?
questions, let's push out questions and then I'll conclude the recording.
So have you posted this yet to PieBox, or you're going to?
No, I will.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, this is great.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
because I was looking at it on a iPhone, so like the charts were like I couldn't even if I made them big enough so I could see them. You know, it was like I lose everything. So I'd really
Yeah.
like to look at this more closely.
Okay, great.
Cool. Well, I'm going to stop the recording really quick. This will be up on PieBox, or the link will be up on PieBox so people can go and review the lesson, and we'll stick around and chat after this. Thanks again.